Hey everyone! So it's been requested I do some kind of video going over the different mods that I'm using on my streaming build for Skyrim. I thought I would just take the time to go over all the ones I'm currently using and discuss how each one improves the game. I will go in alphabetical order. First of all, I have Alternate Start, Live Another Life. This mod you've almost certainly seen if you've watched any of my Skyrim streams. It's the one that makes me start in the jail cell and sort of choose how I want to begin my life in Skyrim. I think that this really helps replayability, both for role-playing purposes and just so you don't have to go through the vanilla opening every time, because it's kind of long. And between us, a little contrived. Next up, I have Amazing Follower Tweaks. Now, this is, it calls itself a tweak thing, and I guess it is, but it's pretty extensive. It greatly improves the whole, follower system that they've got going on. Allows you to determine whether your followers are, killable, receive or acknowledge friendly fire, lets you manage their outfits, have them pose and behave differently if you want that for role-playing purposes. It's just overall better. And it has a built-in framework to allow several followers, up to 30 by default, but that's kind of a crazy number. They're usually 2 or 3 or 4 if you want to put together a whole group and try to play through the game like that. Next up is Apachii Sky Hair, also the natural retexture patch for that. Apachii Sky Hair adds a whole bunch of different hair options to character creation for all races and both sexes. You've likely seen me favoring those in character creation because they honestly just look way better than the vanilla hairs. Apocalypse, Magick of Skyrim, one of the several spell mods that I'm using. Apocalypse adds, I think, 150 or so new spells to Skyrim. It includes scrolls and staves, and the books are all added to the leveled list. It's quite a good one. Apocalypse has a lot of unique spell effects, things like create objects like furniture, or to establish a leeching effect on an enemy, so that when they take damage you restore health, that sort of thing. Stuff that can't really be replicated just using spells or shouts in the game. I have Arrowsmith, which is not related to the band in any way, installed. Arrowsmith allows you to make arrows. They have their own crafting guidelines and stuff, and you still need to unlock the smithing perks to do, Dwarven or Elven arrows. But it's there. Beards! The 2K resolution version of Beards adds beards to Skyrim. It just adds a whole bunch of new beard options. A lot of them are combinations of existing, mustache, goatee, sideburn combinations. Others are more large beards with braids and stuff. Yeah, there's pretty good stuff in there. I'm also running books, which adds a fuck ton of extra books to the game. They're all lore friendly. Most of them are taken from previous Elder Scrolls games. I have Breton Bosmer Half-Elf, a mod that adds a half-elf race between Bretons and the Bosmer. I originally installed this along with a Legend of Zelda quest mod because I wanted a Link character. We might see something about that in the future, but right now it's just a plain old race you have access to. I have Conjuration Madness, which adds a buck ton of conjuration spells to the game. Basically, allowing you to summon any animal or monster the game has to offer. Conjuration Modification. This takes the summoning system and tweaks it to be more like the Dragon Age approach, where when you have an active spell effect, in this case summoning specifically, instead of it just costing X magicka and then when that summon goes away you just cast it again and get a new one, the core game summons now last indefinitely. It doesn't affect mods, unfortunately. But at the cost of a reduction of your overall magicka as long as that thing is summoned. So you can raise dead with necromancy, and that undead will follow you everywhere, but you'll have a little bit less magicka to work with. Consistent older people changes people's bodies to look old, instead of them having, like, old face from here up and then looking like they're 20 from there down. Deadly combat, most of you have seen and heard me talk about this one. This is a combat overhaul, and I really enjoy it. It increases the amount of damage that all weapons do, both by you and your opponent, decreases the effectiveness of armor overall, both for you and the enemies, and increases the just baseline effectiveness of blocking. That being said, taking damage, blocking hits, making any attack that isn't just a basic attack requires stamina, and in the case of power attacks, a lot more stamina than they used to. It also includes things like attacks of opportunity, so if you hit your opponent while they're winding up, you do extra damage. It is a stagger mechanic that prevents stun locking, but allows you to still take advantage of, reliably, stun effects by attacking your opponent at the right times with the right weapons. Additionally, in vanilla Skyrim, enemies tend, even though they might attack, like, circle you, they tend to attack you one at a time. With deadly combat, they will go out of their way to, like, swarm you and kill you to death. So positioning is also way more important. The dodge mod, I don't use all that much, but occasionally it'll save your ass. The idea is to add sort of a, I don't want to say Dark Souls, but like maybe Bloodborne style dodging left to right and then back to combat. You use like the run button when you have a weapon drawn, and instead of trying to run forward, you like jump to the left or jump to the right. It uses up a lot of stamina, but it can get you out of the way of a spell or an arrow that you otherwise couldn't have avoided. Improved dual wield animations just makes it so that your character, when they're like standing still, aren't holding the swords up over their head like this, like that. That is more accurately how two-weapon fighting happens, but the just standing there animation of it looks so dumb, and I hate it. Everybody's different, redone. This one changes up the NPCs to be a little more diverse visually. It's mostly small tweaks. Some of them are a little taller, a little shorter. Their faces have maybe more wrinkles or blemishes, stuff like that. 8 new lore-friendly races. If you've seen my race menu, you've noticed I've got things like Sea Elf, or Snow Elf, or Dwarf, or Half Giant. Each of these, I think, is pretty well balanced. Some of them, like the Half Giant, are very intensely focused on one approach, and that's fighting with two-handed weapons, and not magic. Expanded towns and cities, both the complete version and patches to work well with some of the other mods. Expanded towns and cities takes all of the settlements, towns, and cities that are not in their own unique cells and just expands them. You'll notice like a huge market just outside of Whiterun. That's from Expanded Towns and Cities. You'll notice that Dragon's Bridge now has like buildings on both sides of the bridge. That's Expanded Towns and Cities. Farm Animals adds farm animals to the game. So farms aren't just goats. They're also or goats and chickens. Now there's pigs, geese, roosters that crow at dawn. Like 5 in the morning, and you'll hear roosters crow if you're in a town with a farm, or near a farm. Forgotten Settlements takes a whole bunch of places mentioned in previous Elder Scrolls games, or in books, or what have you, that either used to be, or are still, or should be in the Skyrim region, just adds them to the game. They're not especially well fleshed out, but it does add to the idea that Skyrim is a proper, like, nation and not just a bunch of, like, city-states that vie with each other. It fleshes out the world a little bit. Helgen Reborn, which we haven't really looked at yet, allows you to rebuild Helgen. This is a pretty good mod with a decent, like, quest arc, some good rewards, and it's fully voice-acted, although some of the voice acting is kind of suspect. One guy does a really bad Arnold Schwarzenegger impression the whole time. It's... woof. Hoods and Circlets adds more hoods and circlets. Hunter's Cabin of Riverwood you've probably seen. It adds a sort of starter house to Riverwood that can't be upgraded and doesn't have a lot of amenities. but is a place where you can rest and store your shit early in the game. You can find the key. You have to actually find the key in the mines near Riverwood. Immersive Armors and Immersive Weapons are companion mods that add greater variety of armors and weapons with slightly tweaked abilities related to like stagger, reach, damage, critical chance, all that shit. Also, it just adds variety to the game. Inhuman Soldiers makes it so that a small number of the soldiers in the Imperial Army are not human. They'll be Elven, Khajiit, Argonian, what have you. It'll only be a small number, but they're definitely there. It's just the majority of the army would be Imperial, and since they're in Skyrim, they'd have a bunch of Nords, but the army does include all of Tamriel, so, there should be a few. Left-handed rings allows you to wear a second ring on your left hand. Just good. Less harsh elves gives you skin options to make your elves look less like angly and edgy and harsh. Levitate, a Morrowind spell for Skyrim, comes in two forms. I'm using the sort of Skyrim-specific version, which is to say you focus the spell, you cast it and hold it, and it'll allow you to levitate and move around in the air. There's also a version that works like the Morrowind spell specifically, where you just cast it, and then you can float for a while, and then you have to land before it wears out, or you'll fall to your death. Mighty Magick Skyrim introduces a whole bunch of new spells to the game. Some of them are unique effects, kind of like Apocalypse. Others take abilities that are unique to Dragon Shouts and turn them into spells. Oftentimes they'll be, if not, like, they're not necessarily master rank, but they'll require two hands to use because they're more powerful effects. I guess they didn't want it to just, like, overtake Shouts. They wanted Shouts to be unique, something that doesn't cost magicka, you can do immediately and are powerful. But it does add things like pushback, slowing time, and speeding you up, and stuff like that to your spell lists. Monster Mod version 4 lore version. This is responsible for a lot of my deaths. This is not the one I started the run using, but it's the current iteration. It just went back up on Nexus when it was exclusive to Steam for a while there. This again adds an obscene number of enemies to the game, many of them leveled as well. We probably haven't even seen half of them yet because I haven't made it to a high enough level for some of them to show up. More Elven skin tones just takes the Wood Elf skin tones and adds them to all the other elves, so you have that option. More slots for Enchanting. This one changes the level 100 perk for Enchanting. Instead of it giving you the ability to add 2 effects to an item, you can now add up to 8 effects to an item. It only affects that perk, and it's balanced so that you can add 8 different damage things to a weapon. You might only be able to swing it 3 times before it recharges. So you've got to still balance that out. Like, it's not something... It's abusable, but it's not really like a god thing. Multiple summons. This allows you to summon more than one thing at a time. This works really nicely with the Conjuration Modification mod, so that you can, raise 10 zombies and be an army for you, and then only have 30 magicka, so you can cast a spell and wait forever for your magicka to come back. Necromancer Spell Set adds a handful of more traditional necromancy spells, as well as a bunch of combat-focused conjure spells that don't work on machines or undead, but are powerful in a weird way. A good example would be Scapegoat. Summon creature... you summon a creature that takes all the damage for you for a short period of time. Or Soul Drain, which absorbs magicka from a corpse, destroying the corpse and all of its loot. Poison Mist lets you make poison. Weaken decreases your opponent's protection. And Corpse Decay, which destroys a corpse, but makes that corpse burst into a toxic gas that affects you, allies, and enemies. So you gotta be kind of strategic with its use. You can get those from a guy underneath the arches of the bridge to the College of Winterhold. Ordinator, Perks of Skyrim. This is a great perk overhaul. It's my preferred one. It changes up basically every perk tree except maybe Restoration. I think that one's untouched. And yeah, it makes a whole bunch of other builds viable. It does things like adding a tree to light armor to give you bonuses to unarmed strike, and allowing your unarmed attacks, if you take the right perk, to contribute to your light armor. So sort of move that from being a single heavy armor perk that made it like quasi-viable in the early to mid-game to a real build you can do in Skyrim now, with damage scaling with your stamina. Paladin spell pack adds a bunch of restoration and alteration spells to make you good at fighting undead. It's just pretty good. Permanent legendary bonuses. I love this one. Getting a skill up to 100 and making it legendary resets it to 15, but gives you all of your perk points back that you'd spent in that tree. So you can keep gaining levels indefinitely. Well, permanent legendary bonus allows you to, every time you make something legendary, you gain I think it's a +5 permanent bonus to that skill. So it allows you to have, once you get back up to 100, effectively 105. If you do it again, 110. So it just allows you to become way more powerful. I really enjoy it. Realistic crime radius, so enemies can't just summon the guard from, like, across the hold. They don't just teleport into their house at a farm nowhere near the city because you hit them in their sleep and didn't kill them. Realistic nights makes nights very dark. Realistic race heights make races different heights. The difference between the races in vanilla is kind of there, but it's pretty marginal. If you stand an orc next to a Bosmer, you can clearly see it, but like, an orc should even be taller than a Nord. And so this sort of readjusts that. I'm using the RealVision ENB. Just any ENB is going to improve the way the game looks, although also make it kind of a pain in the ass to work with. So, do your research, figure out if you want to use ENB at all. I'm not going to explain what it does for the game because it just improves the visuals, really. And RealVision is the one I want. It keeps the vanilla look, but just makes it better. I have Safety Load. Highly recommend this. If you have any trouble with the game crashing when you're moving between like one area to another or going through a loading screen of any sort, this will prevent that. And it's been real helpful. Seagulls, from the Elements of Skyrim series, Part 10, adds Seagulls to Skyrim, specifically to all of the ports. They're loud and annoying and quite realistic in that regard. Also, their feathers make healing potions. So that's actually kind of rad. I've got ShowRace menu, Pre-Cache Killer, which is just to prevent problems when you're doing the race menu with a whole bunch of like mods. Sky UI, as you've probably seen, is a better UI for Skyrim. I highly recommend it. Spell crafting for Skyrim you might have seen, which adds a spellcrafting system to the game, both using the game's engine and scripts. Although scripted spells don't benefit from your abilities, so be careful. Like cost reduction doesn't occur with them, but it does for engine spells. Dance of Death, a kill move mod, which adds a whole bunch of extra kill moves to the game and allows you to change the situations in which they can occur and the odds that they will occur in those situations. Training dummies and targets. Really nice early game thing that turns all of the vanilla training dummies and targets into attackable things that will gain you experience. You gain 1/3 of the experience that you would otherwise get for one-handed, two-handed destruction and archery. I really do enjoy it. It's great early in the game to help you put your build together. Ultimate immersive classes. When you start a new game, you'll be given a menu and the ability to choose from a series of categories as to what kind of class you want to be. This is just to let you start with different loadouts and a few skill books to help define your character early on. The unofficial Skyrim Legendary Edition patch. If you're playing the Legendary Edition, get this. That should be the first thing you install. Wet and Cold allows you to look wet and cold when you are wet or cold. You look frosted when you're out in the snow, and you drip for a while after you're walking in the water. Winter is Coming cloaks adds a whole shitload of cloaks to the game. They're just another thing to wear, another thing you can enchant. I like it. And then Wintermyst, Enchantments for Skyrim, adds 124 additional enchantment effects to the game, and they are really broad, and some of them are quite rare. Unless you play the game basically ad nauseum, you're unlikely to see them all on a single character. You kind of have to get lucky. Like, I've seen one or two of the abilities like once, and some of them I've never seen yet. I love this mod, and I highly recommend it. And that is my mod setup. Hope this is what you guys were looking for. I know a lot of you had been asking about this, and my mods have been bugging me to get this done. Thank you, by the way, guys. And yeah, feel free to leave any comments, ask any questions. Make sure you like the video. If you haven't subscribed to my channel, fucking do it, though. And I'll catch you guys on my next stream. Take care.